Hello everyone. This is going to be my review of the Ally X, the first one that Asus launched, the first X series, that is. Now you're going to ask, why in 2026 do we care about this device when there's the Asus ROG Xbox Ally X, whatever it's called, with a big name, out? Well, price. Price and performance is what I would say. Looking at reviews everywhere, the new chip is about 10 to 20% faster, especially at the lower power, but you're paying a pretty penny for that device. It's $1,000 before taxes in the US, and in other countries it might be more depending on taxes and tariffs and so on. I picked this one up for about $650. Why did I pick it up? Well, I wanted to try Windows again. The last one I had that had Windows was a Legion Go, but it didn't get the official full screen experience mode because Lenovo is slow. So I got one of these, and this one also has 24 gigs of RAM, which makes it much more usable with Windows. In this video, we will also see if it is worthy to buy an Asus Ally X in 2026. Whether brand new, or off of Marketplace, or whatever other store that you guys have. Just before we get into the video, you'll see several different devices. They're all the same device. I had gotten a Skull and Co case first, and then I didn't like it, so I got this case, which is a JSOX case, and it also has the JSOX clear case in the back. Going over some of the mods that I have installed on this device. So I have a JSOX case on it with a JSOX clear case on it as well. I'll put a picture of how it looks. This case is extremely hard to remove, so I'm just going to leave it on. But yeah, it comes with the cover. When you take the cover off, you have spots underneath for micro SDs. And then this is the case. It's textured. It has this little attachment on the back, which lets you attach like battery packs or whatever SSD accessories you want. And it's RGB lit, the case, the backing that I changed to. But again, it's hard to access. So I'll put like pictures from their website on how it kind of looks. And lastly, the screen protector I have on is a matte finish. I accidentally got a matte finish. I really like gloss, but it is what it is. And that's the extent of the mods that I have, or accessories. Okay, so let's go over the software aspect of the Asus Ally X. So right now it's powered off. You don't see anything on the screen, so I'm just going to give you the raw experience. I'm going to turn it on. It should automatically. So we're automatically in. Now, it's not going to show up on here because I'm capturing the screen, so it should show up on the screen. Now let me change the setting and get it so that, right, it's going to do. So problem number one, we can already see that I can't really control it with the controllers. So what I'm going to do is unplug. It doesn't really show up too odd. Actually log in. I'm gonna change it to desktop mode. There we go. Okay. This way you'll be able to see it on both, what I do up there and there. So off the get-go, I have it configured so that it goes into the Xbox full screen mode. So what we just saw was the device was put to sleep, and then after a couple hours is when I re-picked it up, and we saw that it went through the entire boot animation again. So the full screen mode that I have here won't be default like this. It typically comes with Windows 24 H2 version, which doesn't support it. So you have to update it to 25 H2 for you to get the benefit of the full screen mode. Now that we're here, we can go over some of the Asus software options. So pressing the button over here, this one on my left thumb, brings up the command center, which is now incorporated into the Xbox full screen experience and the Xbox game bar. In here, you get options like you have your operating mode. So right now I'm in turbo, which is 30 watts. Performance is 17 watts. Silent is 13. And then you have your windows based on the Windows balance modes. You have your gamepad, so you can go between desktop, auto, and gamepad mode. I'm going to switch back to auto. You have your game profiles. So if you click this, it will go into Asus Armory Crate. We'll get to this in a bit. I'm just going to back out of it. You have your keyboard to bring up the keyboard, and then you have your real-time monitors. So there's several versions of it. There's the minimal one, which shows you the time, the temperature of the battery. And right now I'm plugged in, but if I weren't plugged in, it would show the power that's being drawn out of it, and then it would show your FPS in a game. This is a more detailed version. Now it shows you the CPU usage and the frequency, as well as the GPU usage and frequency. And then you have the same view in a square mode. This one shows you your APU watts, so it's about idling at 5 watts right now. Which the APU wattage is different from the battery that'll be seen. So when we set 17 watts in here, it means that the APU wattage is limited to 17, which your actual battery will see will be roughly 5 to 10 watts more. You have your FPS limits. You can do 30, 40, 60, 90, 120, or you can turn it off. And then you have your show desktop, which will go to desktop. You have your AMD RSR built in, and then you have the embedded controller enable and disable. So this is kind of the command center. Now we'll go to the Armory Crate. So this is the Xbox software that it comes with. I'm going to try and back out. So this is the home screen you would go to. I'm going to disable this. So this is the home screen you would come to. It would kind of automatically show your Xbox, your Steam, your EA, your Epic Games, Battle.net, GOG, and Ubisoft Connect off the bat. You can also go to you can use the switch between the two games you have installed. So I have these two games installed only on it. Your settings will show you the different settings. So under general, you have personalization options. Your command centers, you can have the classic grid setup, or you can have the gaming panel mode. Device info, storage, and then about your device, right? And then under performance, this is where you kind of see it more detailed. So you have the Windows set, you have silent, which is 13 watts, performance is 17, turbo is 25. And if you plug this into power, the turbo shows up higher at 30. And then you also have the manual mode. So manual mode lets you go all the way up to 30 watts, 43 watts short term, and burst of 53 watts. I'm going to go back to the Windows mode. Then you have your system stats. It shows you your GPU, CPU, your fan speeds, your memory and storage. You have your Eco Assist. So going back to when I said I put the device to sleep and you saw after a few hours how it looks, that's because I have extreme standby on, which means after a long enough time, it will automatically put the device into hibernate mode, which is a little slower, but it saves battery. CPU boost, if you search around, they will say that for CPU heavy stuff, you want to leave it on. Since I don't do any CPU heavy stuff, I tend to leave it off because I just play games on this. I have a dedicated computer for anything heavy. And then you have to keep the machine running when the screen is off. As far as GPU settings, so I have 10 gigs dedicated to the GPU portion. This is a 24 gig system, so the minimum you can do is 1, and the max is you can do is 16. I don't recommend you do 16. 10, 8 or 10 is probably the sweet spot. I have seen games hit close to 8, so I've left it at 10. Your usage may vary based on the type of games you play. And then you have all your AMD Radeon Super Resolution, Fluid Motion Frames, Anti-Lag, Boost, Radeon Chill, and Image Sharpening. And then if we go to more settings, again, sync Windows power modes with Armory Crate to optimize performance battery. We have your update centers. This is where the Armory Crate, as you can see, that update that popped up at the start is now showing up. These are all the previous updates that they've sent out. Calibration is for your joystick. So if I go, so my sticks seem to be fine. Yeah, I don't know what it's doing, but yeah, your lifter and then your gyro. Aura sync is for your LEDs that you have. Like I have it set to static. And then you have your sync devices. Lighting, again, it's the same thing. Then you have audio, show your audio settings. You have your game visuals, which changes how the screen looks. So changes the color tone and kind of stuff. You have your connections, which is your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. You can do most of this stuff. Using Windows settings too, so you never really have to touch it. But it's here. You have your keyboard shortcuts that you can set up. And then we have battery here. If you have one, I highly recommend this. Which means it'll stop charging at 80%, which you see online. Occasionally you can change it so it can fully charge it if you're going out somewhere. And yeah, that's Armory Crate. And then those are the two major softwares that you get. Being in full screen mode, access to the Microsoft experience, which they've created, where you simply have your two little windows, and then as you launch a game, you'll see more over here. So launch Microsoft Edge. Just to give you an example. So if I go back up, now you'll see you have 3 windows. Then it automatically switches to the joystick for the mouse movement. This is kind of the basic software that Asus ships with their device. So So yeah, that's an overview of the software that they provide. At the heart of the Asus Ally X is the AMD Ryzen Z1 Extreme. So this is a 8-core, 16-thread CPU, or as AMD likes to call them, APU, Accelerated Processing Unit. It has 8 cores with hyperthreading that gets you 16 threads. It has a max boost clock of 5.1 gigahertz with a base clock of 3.3 gigahertz. Its default TDP is 28 watts, and AMD lets you configure it from 9 to 30. So for the case of the Ally X, as I'll put another photo of it, it lets you do it in quiet mode at 13 watts, balanced is 17 watts, and performance is 25 watts on battery and 30 watts while plugged in. As for the graphics side of it, it has the AMD Radeon 780M RDNA 3 with 12 compute cores with a graphics boost of 2900. A little bit more detail about the CPU. It is built on TSMC 4nm, that's about 25 million transistors. This one does have AVX512, which does seem to be beneficial for PlayStation 3 emulation, which, if there is an interest, I can post a video on roughly what the performance is on this. And the display on this is a 7-inch 1080p 120 Hz with variable refresh rate, and it's about 500 nits of brightness. This particular one has 24 gigs of RAM on it, LPDDR5 at 7500 mega transfers per second. When it comes to I/O, it has a 3.5mm jack, 2 Type-C ports, where one of them is USB 4. It can do Thunderbolt 4 as well. Also has DisplayPort 1.4. And the other one is a regular Type-C, which also does support DisplayPort, and both the ports you can use to charge. It does have a UHS-2 microSD card reader. It does not have the new SD Express one that the Nintendo Switch uses. So some games that rely on direct storage from Microsoft will need to go on the SSD rather than the microSD card. And it does have Wi-Fi 6E. I believe it's a MediaTek module, but that's it for the basic specs. So, how does the hardware feel for the Asus ROG Ally X? In a short and in a nutshell, it's adequate. So this one being that I bought off of Marketplace was used for a few months. You can see, let me zoom in, there's like cracks and stuff that's already formed from, I guess, the previous owner opening it, and from me opening it. You can hear that it squeaks. It's certainly not the most robust handheld that I've used. I own the original white Asus Ally that launched in 2023. Compared to that one, this is a huge step up. The buttons and stuff seem nicer. The joysticks are pretty nice. They have a nice tight. The D-pad's nice. It almost reminds me heavily of the Xbox controller buttons, which I'm sure everyone's used to. They're very tactile. The joystick tightness is very similar to the Xbox One 2. These buttons also feel very similar to Xbox, the shoulder buttons. And the triggers, I'd say I prefer the Xbox triggers because the choice of material that's used on here is just nicer. And then obviously these two buttons are also nice, soft, and plush, whereas it's like a very hard, tacky button, which I'm not a fan of. The D-pad I prefer from the Asus, quiet per se. Going back to my previous video, if I do this comparison with this guy, this is somewhere in between the Xbox and the Ally buttons. These are Hall effects, so the triggers are, the thumbsticks are a little looser, per se. These are a little looser. These buttons are much quieter, and I guess they have less of a tactile feeling. The triggers are obviously locking triggers. The triggers on this feel nicer. They're not as like deep as the Xbox ones. Generally, the controls on this, shoulder buttons, I'd say that the Ally has better shoulder buttons. Going back to the build quality, however, the Legion Go S, far better built device, if I have to say. The haptics, I have not tried on this. I will try, I'll cut to it and I'll do the haptic feedback too. But yeah, it's comfy, it's a nice size, and I typically use a skull and co case with it. I have ordered a back plate for it because, again, like you saw, that this is crumbling. Like you can see it visually like breaking already, which shouldn't happen. But yeah, so I'm gonna replace that with a transparent one. I like the black one, but I just don't like the condition it's in, and every time I've opened it, it's gone worse. I do have a screen protector on this. It's a anti-glare. I was kind of hoping to get a matte, but not matte, a glossy, but it ended up with an anti-matte. But yeah, that's the buttons aspect of this. Pretty nice. Again, these are not Hall effect triggers. I wish they were for how much this thing costs. I think they still want like $900 to $1,000 brand new. I do not have an Xbox ROG Ally X, the new ones that come out. Maybe those have buttons, but I'd say they're pretty similar to what this will have. And you have your volume buttons and a power button with a fingerprint scanner too. So that's a nice touch. My Legion Go doesn't have that. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the hardware review and the buttons. You can already see how bad this shell has been damaged for something that's been used for about 6 months. I don't know what kind of abuse the previous owner did, but this should not happen. When I took it apart, it got damaged even more, which is when I decided to change the shell to a JSOX one. When benchmarking the Asus Ally X, I decided to use 3 different power limits that are accessible from the Asus Armory Crate. They include, I used the silent preset, which is 13 watts. I used the balance preset, which is 17 watts. And I used the performance preset. Now, the caveat with the performance preset is when you're on battery, it's 25 watts, but when you're plugged in, it's 30 watts. So for the sake of these tests, I tested it while it was plugged in, so performance preset is 35. Now, Asus will let you crank up these limits higher than 30 watts manually. I, however, did not test those, as I don't see myself doing that tinkering. If you're welcome to tinker, you can tinker with it. The score will either taper off past the 30 watt limit, which Asus already lets you do, or you'll see some slight gain depending on the game being tested. So starting off with 13 watts and times by, I'm going to go over the overall scores. So the overall scores is roughly 2,500. We had an outlier where it got almost 2,700, but that's why I did 3 runs to kind of get the average of it. And then within that, the GPU is roughly 2,300, and the CPU is scoring somewhere between 5,700 to 5,900 between the 3 runs. Going up to 17 watts, we see that the score is roughly 3,100, and it's pretty consistent. There's no weird raises. The GPU portion is consistently getting 2,800 in the graphics score, and the CPU score is roughly around the 8,000 to 8,100 mark. So here is a curve of how it looks with times by the GPU. As you scale the power, your score does seem to be scaling pretty well, and going from 13 to 17 is a pretty steep increase. We'll see the roll-offs in a bit. And then it starts to taper off past the 17. The CPU is, however, slightly different. There seems to be no real performance gain going from 17 to 30 watts in my testing. And again, this was done over 3 runs, so it's pretty stable. I also did test Cinebench too. Now, it's a pretty similar trend, but the Cinebench score, unlike the 3D Mark score, from 17 to 30 watts seems to be increasing slowly. And now this is one of those workloads where if you do manually go in and set 35, 40 watts, it will keep going up consistently at a lower rate. And then when we look at the roll-offs, so the blue line is 3D Mark GPU, the orange line is the 3D Mark CPU, and then the gray line is the Cinebench. So you can kind of see that for the CPU portion, it just like flatlines past 17 watts. Going from 30 watt down to 17 watt is a reduction of 10% performance, but you're also dropping 13 watts in TDP. So 13 watt TDP reduction, 10% performance gain, pretty good. Cinebench, when you drop from 30 to 17, it's a greater 15% reduction. And then going down from 30 watts to 13 watts on the GPU side on TimeSpy, it's a massive 25% penalty with almost a 17 watt reduction in power. So it's not bad. It scales pretty well in my opinion. So these are for the synthetic tests. The gaming benchmarks, I'm gonna save for another video because I recorded the data, but that itself is going to be like 30-40 minutes. I went through several games and I tuned the games towards mine. So feel free to subscribe and like the video so that you can see when I post the next one.